Okay, so here we go with the cell membrane. Cell membrane, in looking at transport in and out of the cell membrane is where that happens. It is considered the gateway to the cell. It's how things get in and how they get out. And the functions of the cell membrane. One of them, it functions as a protective barrier, much like I said, as far as the door of your home, whether or not you're going to let someone in your home. It regulates transport in and out of the cell. There's that selectively permeable. It gets to choose what comes in and goes out. It could be based on size. It could be based on the charge, all kinds of different reasons as to whether or not the cell is going to let that in. It allows for cell recognition. There are proteins on there, and it provides the anchoring system for filaments of the cytoskeleton. So all of those are functions of the cell membrane. Okay, so this word homeostasis, what does it mean? Homeostasis is a balanced internal condition of the cell. So you want there to be a balance. And this is also called equilibrium. So those two words you'll see used interchangeably. We'll say it'll go to equilibrium or until it maintains homeostasis. And this homeostasis, this balanced condition, is maintained by the cell membrane by allowing things to come in or leave. Here's the structure of the cell membrane. Here we have those phospholipid bilayers. Here's the phosphate groups. Remember, they're water-loving. And the lipids here, they don't like the water. And here are different proteins. Here's a protein channel. Notice it spans all the way from the outside to the inside of the cell. And then you have your peripheral proteins. All right, so you're in the cell membrane. The polar heads are hydrophilic, and hydro meaning water, philic meaning love. So they're water loving. These phosphate groups like the water. The non-polar tails are hydrophobic, phobic meaning fear. So it's water fearing. They don't like it, so they turn in. They don't want to be by this water on the inside or the outside. And again, this is what makes it selectively permeable and what crosses it. Hydrophobic molecules obviously don't pass easily, pass easily, and the hydrophilic ones do not. Okay, let's look at the types of transport. There's two types. You have passive transport. It doesn't require energy. That makes sense. Think if someone described you as being really passive, or like I have two different kind of dogs. One's passive, one is active. So the passive one doesn't use a whole lot of energy. Passive transport moves particles from an area of high concentration to low concentration. So it naturally is going to want to move that way. If I had 80 students in my classroom and Miss Gullidge next door had 10, we'd all be looking over at Miss Gullidge's classroom thinking, man, it sure would be nice to be over there, even though she's not as fun of a teacher as I am. But it would be better to be over there because there's too many kids in our classroom. So we would naturally go from high concentration to low. It wouldn't take a whole lot of convincing. I wouldn't have to put a whole lot of energy and effort into convincing you to go from a classroom of 80 to a classroom of 10. And examples of this passive transport are osmosis and diffusion. We'll look at those in just a moment. Okay, the other type of transport is active transport. That's my Labrador. That's the dog with lots of energy, and like it says, active transport requires energy. It moves particles from low concentration to high concentration. You can imagine if Miss Gullidge, when her 10 students looked over here at my 80, and she said, you know what, I think you 10 need to go over to that classroom over there. Besides the fact that they already know how awesome I am and my classes are so phenomenal, but besides that, let's just say they don't know how wonderful it is over here. It's going to take a lot of work on her part to really convince those students that they want to come over to a class this fall. So it would take energy. It requires energy. And examples of these are endocytosis and exocytosis. And again, we'll look at those in more detail. Okay, so here's this process of diffusion, and here's a little picture here to show you. It starts off at a high concentration, and those molecules are going to diffuse until they are about the same, until they're at equilibrium. So like we said before, it does not require, this is passive transport, does not require energy. They naturally want to go from high concentration to low concentration. So when they were all bunched up here, they wanted to get away. There were some they weren't so happy with. Now they're a lot happier because they've all moved apart from each other. And there you have it. You can see the cytoplasmic membrane, the oxygen molecules. We have more on the outside, less on the inside. So those oxygen molecules are going to diffuse into the cell until it reaches a point of equilibrium where there is the same number of oxygen molecules on the outside as there are on the inside. So you can see now they're about equal, but when it starts, it's not. Okay, so here's diffusion through a membrane. So here we have a membrane. Remember, our membrane is selectively permeable. It's only letting some things in, not everything. So with that being the case, here's our membrane, high concentration here, low concentration here. What do you think is going to happen? Well, we want to go from high to low, so they're going to want to move through that membrane and get to this side. So this is called the solute. These little green things are the solute, and they're in the solution. So the solute moves down the concentration gradient from high to low. That's an important point. I want you to take good notes with that. The solute moves down the concentration gradient because we're going from high concentration down to low concentration. All right, here we have facilitated diffusion. Still, diffusion still requires no energy. However, facilitated means help. It needs help. So the molecules are going to randomly move through these pores. Remember I said the protein channels are how things can move through, can transport into and out of the cell. If it can't go through the cell membrane, it can go through these protein channels. And so it'll move through these pores from high concentration to low. So these molecules here, whoops, let's go back that. Let me go back. So right here, they're going to want to diffuse. This is higher concentration in here, lower out there. So they're going to move through this protein channel. It's not going to require any energy. They're small enough to fit through here, and they're just naturally going to move from high to low concentration. All right, let's look at osmosis. All right, now, the difference with osmosis and diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of the molecules. Osmosis is the diffusion of water across this membrane. So what's moving is not, the molecules can't move. This semi-permeable membrane is not allowing the molecules to move through this membrane. And so but it still wants to go from high concentration to low. You can see it. It's highly concentrated and it's lower here. So what you're going to have is this movement from high water potential to low water potential. So the water is actually going to move to the area of higher concentration of the molecules to dilute it, so that both sides of the concentration are going to be equal. Okay, I'm going to stop here for now. We'll go into active transport on the next video.